think it's all over. It is now.
Balotelli, Aguero! Here's Hulk! Didi!
Welcome to the Matchmaker Podcast.
This is our podcast where we ask guests to create their dream match.
The rules are simple. We get them to choose a venue, a coach to manage their side, and 11 players to make up their team.
We then pit this team against one of history's greatest sides, which is randomly drawn.
They will then be asked a series of questions relating to the side they're playing against.
And each question they get right is a goal for their team, whereas each question they get wrong is a goal for their opponents.
Will their dream team be victorious? Stay tuned to find out.
Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the very first episode of the Matchmaker Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Tregunner. This is my co-host, Freddie, and we're joined by author Dominic Stevenson. Hello, Dom.
Hi, you all right, guys?
Yeah, good,
Yes,
thank you.
good, thank you.
How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well.
Can we just start by sort of you introducing yourself a little bit for the listener?
Okay, so I am Dominic Stevenson and I'm an author, but I'm also a football coach. I work for charities and third sector organisations doing their comms, and so it's all sort of led me down to a path where I want to talk about mental health, and in particular mental health for football and for football fans. And so my book, Get Your Head in the Game, is out in a few months, and it examines the intersection between football and mental health. So I've spoken to players such as Chris Kirkland, Sam Hutchinson, players from far away like John Harkes, who was the USA captain, and then people from the women's game like Kelly Lindsay and Ella Masar. So yeah, real cross-section of footballers, of football managers, football fans to get their views on mental health.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I've read a sort of advanced copy of the book. Freddie's not got around to reading it yet, but sort of just wanted to start by saying, what inspired you to write Get Your Head in the Game?
I think really it was because I've been going to football since I was 4, and I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and it's not always the happiest place to be, but there's just no other form of entertainment, form of game, form of activity where people go expecting misery. I don't think that people don't go to the cinema to see a film they think will be rubbish. People don't go to a concert if they've not heard a band before. And obviously it is unpredictable, and that's the beauty of the game, that we don't always see the result that's expected, that on paper should happen. But equally, it's just as we approach a time where I feel the world is ever more divided, that we have things like Brexit, we have the right wing, the left wing, we have all sorts that people have stopped communicating, and what with social media, people communicate in little sound bites and they reply with offensive words to other people, and that is the extent of national dialogue, and it's grating. It's so depressing clicking on Twitter, even on Instagram now, which is mainly a picture forum, to just see people having a go and people who've done this wrong and done that wrong and blah blah blah. And then you sort of go to football for a bit of escapism, and then sat there and you've got the 3 blokes behind you, just they're on players' backs. And the turning point for me, I took my partner to see Wednesday play, and we had a goalkeeper called Cameron Dawson, who, it was one of his first games, he just saved a penalty, and they were abusing him. And it was at a time when the last 20 years when we've been going through a period of flux, but we were not doing amazingly. And this kid came on, this 21-year-old kid came on in a derby match, saved a penalty, and got us a bit of respectability. And yet these blokes were abusing him. And my partner said to me, why? Like, what's he done wrong? It's like, they're just miserable. And you kind of think that it doesn't turn itself off. If someone bumps into you in the supermarket and calls you a name, and then you go home, you talk to people about it, and you say, that's really got me down, that's upset me. And so you go to football, you listen to people shout and abuse other people for an hour and a half. What is their life like at home? And to me, it feels like it comes from depression, from a national conversation about mental health that isn't happening, that more can be done to help people. So, and it will have positive knock-on effects, that people's families will be happier, people will live happier lives if they start to be a bit more honest about their mental health, I think.
One of the things you said in the book that I thought was a very good point is that you wouldn't turn around to someone's opinion in the pub that you didn't know and just tell them, like, throw loads of abuse at them. Whereas social media now, when a player walks off the pitch, maybe like 30 odd years ago, that would be that. But now they're getting abuse probably all day, every day, pretty much.
Yeah, and I spoke to Sam Hutchinson, who's at Sheffield Wednesday, and he said that he's seen players in dressing rooms scrolling through their Twitter after a match in tears because of the abuse they've received.
Was that Foxy?
Yeah,
yeah.
And it was just, it just feels horrific that level of bullying goes on. And yeah, they're well paid, and I get that, and there's a huge disconnect, but it doesn't matter how well paid someone is. There's no excuse in bullying them, because in the pub you don't go up to someone and ask how much they earn to see whether you value their opinion. And so what, and no one's ever come into my office and shouted abuse at me. Like, bosses maybe, but not randoms off the street.
Yeah, if a player went into, I don't know, a footballer went into a supermarket and started shouting at the person stacking the shelves, "Oh, you're rubbish at your job."
The outrage.
Yeah. But then the book isn't all like the negative aspects of mental health. The thing I really like in particular is at the end of each chapter, you've got the view from the terrace, and it's just like a little line or paragraph from football fans of all ages, genders, from like all around the world, and they basically say what football means to their mental health. I think that's a really nice like touch. It's good to see that the sport and the game, because it is just a game, but it has such a positive impact on millions, if not billions, of people.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of came from, I really wanted the voice of fans in there, and what happened is I was actually struggling to find a cross-section of fans I could talk to. That I was getting a lot of people like yourselves who are young and very savvy with media, and I was getting a lot of people who, like the people that speak to in the book more extensively, like writers and journalists and people like that, who were very keen and willing and able to talk. But what I was struggling with is getting in touch with fans who were, I mean, I say just fans, I don't mean that in a sort of derogatory manner, but I mean the person on the street, the person you'd stand next to in the pub. Like, my Twitter feed for a long time was me just reaching out to people, and either they said no or they just ignored me. And that is, again, it comes back to the difficulty about talking about mental health, is that a lot of people don't want to talk about it, and that is a shame. And so I suppose part of what I wanted to do was show people that their heroes talk about it.
There was one story which was quite harrowing. His name's left me, but I think he's a Scottish striker who tried to commit suicide.
David Cox.
Yeah, and then someone replied saying, like, you should have done it better or something like that. To me was just outrageous. I think if every single person who went to football or likes football. I suppose you don't even need to like football, but if everyone read that and realised the effect of their words on people, then the world would be a bit of a better place for sure.
I'd hope so. And people forget that in the Premiership, people earn a decent amount, and that doesn't excuse it, but I can see why people feel disconnected. But what people forget is you go into the Championship, and you've got players on £1,000-2,000 a week, and I know that's a lot of money. But when you think that they have a career on that for maybe 10 years, then they've got to retrain, they've got all that kind of stuff, and there's no stability that I think people just, because they pay to have access to players, whether it be through the Matchgate or at the end of season awards dinner, they feel like they own a chunk of them. And I think that makes people feel like they've got a reason, an excuse to be like that. But David's a very special person, and a very amazing character, and I love talking to him. He is such a positive advocate for people with mental health challenges, and if anyone wants to Google him, David Cox, there's countless stories about him out there. So
and then there's instances as well. You said you interviewed Chris Kirkland where it's not actually just verbal abuse from the side of the pitch. I think it was a game against Leeds that a fan came on and attacked him, and sort of Jack Grealish as well. It's just footballers are sort of maybe made out to be a target that it's okay to have a go at, whereas obviously it's not. But what would you like to see from football clubs or football in general going forward to maybe support players and support fans?
I think with players, what football has to realise is that, and what football fans have to realise is that football clubs aren't awash with money like people think they are. That you go below Premiership level, below the top of the Championship, and you're struggling, like the staff that are there, that you have no mental health support, you have no counselling, you have nothing like that. And as with anyone, if you go out in front of 20,000 people a week and they're all shouting the odds at you and harassing your family in the street between matches, following you on social media and abusing you, and then you've got no one to talk to, and you've got no one to let that bit of steam off, and you can't even go for a few drinks with your mates because you're an elite athlete, and you can't do anything, you can't get out of it. But then there's no money for that counsellor to be there. And then I think from a fan's point of view, you just got to look at, there's a gentleman called Jay Whittle who has started a mental health group for Wigan fans in the aftermath of the tragic stuff that's going on there at the minute, and doing amazing things, getting 30 odd people down to a mental health discussion group in Wigan. Like, that would have been unheard of a few years ago, and that's such an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, and on that point as well, I mean, mental health in football has definitely come a long way, and there's even in the Championship, and the Mind charity is one of the main sponsors, isn't it? And it's good to see that it's being spoken about at all, and also being embraced kind of in the commercial side as well. And that sponsorship hasn't been given to like a beer brand or something like that. It is opened up to charities. It's really good to see.
Yeah, in the book I spoke to a lady called Hayley Jarvis from Mind, and she was talking about that and about clubs like Sunderland who are having drop-in sessions for fans who want to talk about their mental health, and they're getting volunteers down to engage in those discussions, and it's really positive, and a lot of good stuff is happening. It's just, it feels sometimes like it's too late for some, that they have sort of given up, and I think it's about self-worth and self-respect as well, that you've got a lot of, and I say bloke, like, I know that football is a much more diversely watched sport than than it once was, but often it's blokes, often they're sort of 50 plus who they may have had a trade and they feel disenfranchised, they feel like the government's not listening to them, like other people aren't listening to them, and do you know what I mean? All of a sudden, perfectly sensible people go from having a nice life to thinking that coronavirus is a government conspiracy, that refugees are coming across in dinghies because they want to not only take all of the benefits but also steal your job at the same time, and it's just kind of a whirlpool of hate that they fall into. And I think it's a responsibility of football fans and football to have that hand out, and it's difficult because I'm affected by Brexit. I thoroughly hate the thought of it, and for a long time I very actively hated the people who voted for it, and I still don't know why, but it destroys people having that much hate, and we'll never recover if we all cling on to that much hate.
Yeah, I think football is a tribal sport, and a lot of division is tribalistic. But even though football is it's one team against another team, it is a sport where if, for example, I went and met someone new, one of the first things I'd ask them maybe is, "Do you like football?" And then suddenly you have a common ground, and it's a good discussion point. It's a good conversation starter. So yeah, sport I think has to do more because people say that you shouldn't mix politics with sport. We have stuff in America like the NBA players, and then we have taken the knee here now as well because of Colin Kaepernick. It's just sport should do more to actually actively get involved in politics and division, I think, personally.
Yeah, and I think like the example of Black Lives Matter and taking the knee here, that I saw a lot of backlash on it on social media, and it was from people who hadn't taken the time to understand. It was from people who saw the words defund the police, but never took the time to understand what defunding the police would mean and would look like. And what it looks like is a more community-based structure where we have youth centres and childcare and clinics to help people get off drugs, and rather than arresting people and throwing them in jail. And I think it's a difficult situation where the people who want to do good and positive things, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book as well, have to reach out the hand of friendship to people we may otherwise not normally want to befriend. Because if we don't, all we're doing is isolating them and just dropping them in a big pile of hate and leaving them there. Whereas if we put the hand of friendship out and the hand of conversation and the hand of explaining that like for me, I have learned so much, particularly on LGBTQIA issues, because I've had a lot of people who've spoken to me and engaged with me and taught me things and helped me on a journey of discovery, and that's been really positive. And I think often we see other people as too old to learn, too thick to learn, too poor to learn, too rich to learn. But what we need to do is understand that people are complex individuals, and we need to engage with them, not cut them off and isolate them.
Yeah. Sometimes all it takes is a conversation.
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind me going back to the mental health of fans in football, what part do you think fan channels like Arsenal Fan TV play in that? Because obviously, as a Chelsea fan, and I'm sure other fans as well, we contribute to the views of Arsenal Fan TV when Arsenal are doing poorly, and we want to see them upset, and we want to see Claude effing and Jeff and everything like that. But how do you feel? Yeah, how do you feel? See, like for a Chelsea fan and other fans, seeing the joy of Arsenal fans being upset. Just how do you think it plays into the mental health of?
I think we're all old enough and daft enough to realise that there's got to be a bit of that. there's got to be some light-hearted banter. There's got to be that sense of you lost, so we'll take the mickey a bit. I think it can go too far, but I also think that is almost a slightly different discussion, because I'm 35 now, and I suspect I'm quite a bit older than you two. And I've never watched a fan TV. Like, I watched a football match on YouTube for the first time just before this podcast. Like I don't know my password to get onto YouTube, because I'm kind of the middle. There's football fans older than me, and digital native football fans younger than me. But I also think a lot of the fans who are really engaged in fan channels are also more aware of their mental health and more aware of others' mental health. And it can cross the line, because every format has a bad apple, and there's someone who'll go too far. But I think fan TV and things like that is really positive, because it gets people engaged, it gets people talking, and I really enjoy following. Like, I follow some Chelsea, Man U, Liverpool, Arsenal fans on Twitter, just for the crack, just to see, just particularly during like transfer season, just to hear the banter, and especially coming from a Sheffield, like as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, where, do you know what I mean? We were umming and ahhing about whether to spend 800,000 on some kid from West Brom. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got all these Man U fans going, "Oh, but we've not spent 120 million on Jadon Sancho. Like, when we're not even a football club anymore. What are they trying to do? Destroy us?" And you're like, honestly, mate, like 120 million. We've never. In Wednesday's whole history, the only thing we've spent 120 million on is our own ground to buy it off ourselves to avoid getting sanctioned for financial mismanagement. But yeah, it's I just think it's really positive, and it's conversation, and it's people talking to each other, and it's because life is a bit rubbish at the minute. I'm in my flat now, and I've been in this flat since March. I've spent 4 or 5 days more than a mile away from this flat since March, and it's rubbish. And I go online, and when you look past the division, you see all these people having really good banter, having a really nice time. And yeah, they wind each other up, and they get a bit leery at times, but it's all good fun. And I think that is really important, that particularly nowadays. Now, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan. I live in Edinburgh, and before that I lived in London, and I can't get to many games. So being online helps me engage with other Wednesday fans. And do you know what I mean? Football is a worldwide sport, and so we need those opportunities to engage with people with common interests to us. And yeah, just as long as attacks don't get personal and things don't get too far. And if people listen, like, it's fine to take the mickey out of someone for saying that they should buy Jadon Sancho, but if you just go in there with abuse, like, I don't know, you're an idiot for following Man U or whatever, then that's when it goes, you know what I mean, a bit wrong.
Yeah.
So, if you're happy with everything we've covered about the book, or is there anything else you want to say in particular that we haven't really mentioned?
No. I'm happy. I think I'll probably have to go away and update myself on Fan TV and other such things.
Yeah, I'll send you some links.
Yeah, no. I think as well, because a lot of smaller teams don't have such things, so it's a bit harder to engage with. And I think because obviously teams like Arsenal, Chelsea got fans all around the world, and then you go to I don't know, Wednesday, Grimsby, Notts County,
Argyle.
That that you've got much smaller audiences, and so you don't necessarily get. Do you know what I mean? You'll get a few hundred hits a week, not tens of thousands, and I suspect it's a bit dispiriting. And I think that the world is, or the internet anyway, is probably full of discontinued fan pages from smaller clubs because no one was watching.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Sheffield Wednesday's chances this for next season? Gary Monk at the helm.
I mean, years ago, when Wednesday got rid of Carlos, I called for Gary Monk to come in, and unfortunately, 2 years later, I got my wish. The thing is, I'm just not sure. I think we ended the season in such bad spirits that there was a real down atmosphere around the club. But then we got the 12-point deduction. And I think, if anything, it's created a bit of a siege mentality, that people are being a bit nicer and a bit more supportive. And I think people are trying to give him a break. But he's one of those characters that I think he makes it very hard for people to like him.
We had a PE teacher at school who was friends with Gary Monk, and Mr. Grinsell. Do you remember Fred?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, he did well at Swansea, didn't he, for a while, but then...
I think for me, the challenge with Gary Monk, and no one else seems to agree with this theory, but it's my theory anyway, is that he was a top player at Swansea, and he took them, he led them as captain from the bottom of the 4th division right the way to the Premiership, and he was Mr. Swansea. And then he took over as manager and was Mr. Swansea. And he was always used to being the top dog in any dressing room. And then I thought he got screwed over at Swansea. I thought he got unfairly dismissed. He should have been given more of a chance. And since then, he's gone from place to place, like big clubs like Leeds, Middlesbrough, Birmingham. And he's tried to get rid of, and he did it Wednesday, tried to get rid of the senior pros, the players with personality, the Sam Hutchinsons, the Kieran Westwoods, and he seems to be trying to force out who is now seemingly the former captain at Wednesday now, Tom Lees. And I think he just he's used to being the top dog. But teams need top dogs. Like Man U needed Roy Keane back in the day. Arsenal needed Vieira. Chelsea needed Lampard and Terry. And I'm not saying Wednesday needed any of the players being forced out, but we've got one, maybe two people you count as experienced senior pros now. And so who guides the youngsters? Who drags everything up? And that's the question. But I think we'll go for a steady mid-table finish next year. I think the thing about the Championship, there's so many good teams, but there's always 3 teams worse than us.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm optimistic about that there's going to be 3 teams worse than us.
Well, I go to uni in Bournemouth, and what you were saying about Gary Monk sort of reminded me of Eddie Howe in a way, is that, and I think sooner or later, a manager for a team will have had to have played for that team at some point. Because we're seeing it already, like Lampard at Chelsea, Arteta at Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think the clubs are just going to be like, they know the club, so we'll hire him. If he hasn't played for the club, won't even consider him. I think that'll be the new normal, sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's the thing that there seems to be no sort of, except for David Moyes, like sort of managers, like jobbing managers in their 50s at top level. And you've either got just out of school, as it were, ex-pros, or you've got, people are so long in the tooth.
Hodgson.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing. Like, I like Roy Hodgson. He's in his, what is he, 98? Yeah, I think he's 72, I think.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean? Go and take Mrs. Hodgson on a cruise or something.
Retire.
Like, yeah.
Put your feet up.
Yeah, and, you know what I mean? Give Sam Allardyce a shot again. You know what I mean?
Dear me. Big Sam.
Yeah.
What a man.
No.
Right, so get your head in the game. An exploration into football's complex relationship with mental health, I
Yes.
think. Yep. Available to pre-order now.
Yes.
I'll put a link to it in the description of this.
Thank you very much.
And it'll be out, I think, is it September?
No,
right.
it comes out in a few months, sort of
Okay.
November, December time.
Okay.
So just in time for Christmas, everyone.
Yeah, perfect. And like I said, I've read through this version of it. I'm presumably pretty close to the final version.
Yeah. So I mean, it was just I'm dyslexic, so there's loads of typos in there. So
Well, I couldn't see them, so maybe that bodes well. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. I think if you're a fan of football, have to read it. If you're not even a fan of football, read it, because it's a good human sort of element to the sport. And I think it's definitely worth a read. So I'll put the link in the description for that.
Thank you very much.
And now should we move on to the matchmaking part of the Matchmaker podcast and Dominic Stevenson, make your dream football match.
Okay, so I am starting off with the venue.
Yeah, the stadium.
So the stadium. So I've chosen Cowdenbeath Central Park Stadium.
Can't say I've ever been there.
I mean, there's not many people have been there, but I went there in the hope of interviewing David Cox for the book, and it's the first time I've been there, and I'd seen Cowdenbeath train a few times at the Orion, which is like this big fancy sports complex near Edinburgh, and then I went down to Central Park Stadium, and it sounded very grand, and I got there, and it's a stock car track. So think the London Stadium, but on a budget. And so you've got one stand, which is, I mean, I sort of feel bad saying this in case the fire service are listening and go and shut it down, but it's this wooden this wooden stand, and there's like a net between the home and away end, and it's just stunning, like in a really old-fashioned kind of way. And you look out, and there's just grass verges around the pitch and this rally track, and the pitch sort of just fits on in the middle, and it's just one of the most interesting places I've ever seen a football match. Probably besides like Yeovil or somewhere. Like imagine Yeovil's Hewish Park, but with a rally track around it. That's what we're going for, and I just think and I just think that all good football matches need a good old-fashioned football ground, because I've been to the Emirates and stuff like that, and I like them, but you just it's not like it was. And so I think Central Park Stadium, Cowdenbeath, plus all their staff and like volunteers and stuff, and they're so friendly. So if ever you happen to be in Fife,
well, you never know. It's a long old way from Plymouth, but
no,
never know.
It's a long old way from Edinburgh. So, and then I would say managing the team, I would go for Mr. Ian Holloway, because I mean we all know Ian Holloway from the clips, from Blackpool, where he did an amazing job, but from the funny clips, from the memes, from the jokes. But I grew up in
Ronaldo.
Yeah, exactly.
And the hamster as well.
Yeah. But I grew up in Grimsby, and he's the manager of Grimsby now, but he's also invested financially in the club. He's moved to the place, and no one moves to Grimsby. We all move away. And do you know what I mean? Like often, like it's to find work or whatever, but to see someone so committed, so dedicated, and taking Grimsby, a club that my granddad's a season ticket holder of, so I care about, taking them in the right direction. I think I just think that's really great, and I think he's a top person. He's a real advocate for supporting players with their mental health, and I think if there were just a few more like him, I think the game would be a much better place.
I think I saw a clip going around Twitter. I think it was in Grimsby. He went into a primary school and was given the
Yeah.
kids to talk at an assembly and stuff, and you just think
Yeah.
that's a proper manager. I mean, he messed Argyle about a bit. He left us when we were probably in the best position to get promoted ever, and went back to, I think he went to Leicester and didn't go great there. But yeah, as you saw that, and you hear him in interviews and stuff, and you think he's a proper football man, and he's a likeable personality for sure.
Yeah, and I think he learned from all that I've read and heard. I think he learned from that experience you were saying about Argyle, that he took the leap. He went too big too soon and fell on his arse. But I think that takes a big person as well, not just say they deserve another chance at the top, to get back down and get in the dirt with the lower league teams and work his way back up. I think. Yeah, and we all make mistakes, but you've got Ryan Lowe now, and he's doing a top job. So
I think people have forgiven Ian Holloway a bit. Like, it was ages ago anyway, but yeah, Ryan Lowe, Viva la Ryan.
Yeah, former Wednesday striker.
Yeah, who hasn't he played for really? I mean,
well, exactly.
He's been around a bit.
Yeah.
Ian Holloway is a good choice. I can see him in the Central Park Stadium shouting to your goalkeeper, who is
goalkeeper. Probably wouldn't play at the Central Park Stadium, but Gianluigi Buffon.
He was all right, wasn't he? Must have lived.
Yeah, he's all right. He's done a bit, I suppose. But the reason that I have picked him is because I think, not only is he just a legend, that he's played for years at top level and done amazing things, but also when he was in his sort of early stage of his career, he suffered from anxiety attacks and was having a lot of trouble with his mental health. And he spoke to his trainer about it and took some time out. And he came back, and I don't think he's missed a game in the 20 years since. And I think you've got to wonder how many people could have played at the top of their game for a lot longer if they'd have been supported to or made the choice to take a little bit of time out. And I think he's an example to us all of the positives that can happen when you speak about your mental health. Yeah. So that's why I picked him.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that he had those problems until you sent me the team through, and I think how he's early 40s now, is he? And to played for that long, just it does show the benefit of sometimes just being like, I need a break. It's all a bit too much.
Yeah.
Good World Cup winning goalkeeper in
I think I've started near the top of the most recognisable names in my team, but I thought, because I need that be the first one on, I thought I'll leave the Messi and Ronaldo's for other people.
Yeah, we were a bit worried in the concept that people might just have the same teams, but your team, I don't mean to cause any offence for this, but I don't think many people will choose a lot of the players to come.
No,
and that's good. That is a good thing.
I'd hope so. I thought as I was doing it, I thought, am I being too contrary or too?
Oh no, definitely not.
Out there, but I thought no. We've got you've asked me an honest question, so I need to give you an honest answer. And so my right back, because I've gone for a 4-4-2 formation, because as Mike Bassett said, it's the only way forward. I've gone for Liam Palmer from Sheffield Wednesday. So he's a local lad, grew up in Worksop, went through all the youth teams, played over 300 career games and played for Scotland. And as well as that, he stood up and was counted when it came to Black Lives Matter, and he took a lot of heat for it. And he's taken a lot of heat throughout his career. And he's not the most gifted player you'll see in the world, but he's very, very good. He's an international defender. And I think what people so often forget is that to be a footballer of any level, down to step 7 or 8, you've got to be a lot better than most of us ever were. It's not I played all right. I played had trials and so on, but I couldn't just walk up to Worksop Town and, you know what I mean, get like it's not that I can't be bothered that I'm not playing in the conference. It's because I'm not good enough. And people forget that. And so I think Liam Palmer, just because he personifies all that I think football should be. That it, do you know what I mean? A local lad supports the club, used to be a season ticket holder until he got in the first team, went with his dad, went with his mum, loved the game, family still go. I just think what better example to a community can you have than a player like that?
I think that's every football fan's dream, really, isn't it?
Exactly. He's living the thing that a lot of us wanted to do all of our lives. And today, I'm not sure when this will go out, but if you Google the 2020 Community Shield, then you will see a goal by my centre-back, Millie Bright.
Unbelievable goal.
Yeah, like from about 40 yards out, straight in the top corner. Unstoppable, and I think, I mean, as I put in my description, she's an absolute monster. Like, I can't imagine being tackled by her. Like, I don't think I'd be able to get up. Like, she's just, for England, exactly. And for England, for Chelsea, she's won so much, she's done so much. She's dragged teams forward. She's a brick wall. And as well, she's incredibly skillful. And as she showed in the Community Shield, like, amazing goal scorer. And she's got such a rounded game. And I think you've got top players in the women's game. And I think, as with the men's game, that the defenders, they get overlooked a bit, but they play such an important part. So, so Millie Bright for Chelsea and England. It's my first central defender.
Solid choice.
Yeah, and to be paired with John Walk from Ipswich Town.
Well, you're going to have to forgive us, but when we were going through a team, neither of us have actually heard of him, which is disappointing from us. We apologise, but yeah.
See, this goes back to feeling like I was showing my age. He was very much Mr. Ipswich, but if you look at his career, he seemed like a reluctant Mr. Ipswich because he kept on moving away and moving back.
Stints at Liverpool and Borough as well.
Yeah, exactly. But he was just a really solid central defender. He was in the film Escape to Victory, which, if you've not seen it, then, but if any of the listeners haven't seen it, then go and, you know what I mean, get on VHS or Betamax or whatever the kids are watching nowadays. But when I was 7, I broke my arm, and it was in the newspaper because I refused to have my Wednesday shirt cut off.
Yeah, that was in the book, wasn't it? I saw that.
And I got invited down to the Wednesday ground to watch a match, and it was Wednesday Ipswich, and I can remember meeting him before the match, and he was a really nice fella as well. And so I think he's solid, dependable, he's got ambition but still reliable, and I think nice guy to boot. So I think a good centre-back pairing of, and he's Scottish, so it's sort of the yin and yang of, you know what I mean, temperaments there with another solid English defender. So
giving Buffon a bit of protection as well.
Exactly. And then at left back, Stuart Pearce, because I think, is there any other left back for the self-respecting Englishman picking a team? I mean, it was a close call with Ashley Cole, because I think Ashley Cole is one of the most vilified footballers of our time, who will never be recognised for the skills that he had.
I think he's arguably one of the only English players who you could say was the best in his position in the world. Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. There's no one who compared with him at his height. But I think the reason I went for Pearce instead is because I've just always liked the knowledge that he used to advertise his services as an electrician in the Nottingham Forest programme.
Can you imagine that nowadays?
No.
A player just being like, oh, if anyone needs their circuits rewiring, just after the game, give me a call.
And I think that it's weird because a lot of us know him as an England player, as a failed manager.
David James substitution.
Yeah, but I think he is one of the last relics from that age of football where it wasn't necessarily the number one career choice, like that you had to keep on to your trade just in case the football fell through. And that was when he was winning the European Cup. So, you know what I mean? And then as we enter midfield, it's a bit of a blast from the past, but as a Sheffield Wednesday fan, that one of the people that inspired me for this book as well, even though he's not particularly in it, is a gentleman called Jimmy Seed. He was he captained Wednesday to 2 championships in 28-29 and 29-30. So a long time ago. But what inspired me is he was a soldier in the First World War, and he got evacuated because he had mustard gas dropped on him. And after the war, he tried to start his career again. And he played like one match for Sunderland, like a few weeks after he came back, and his lungs were knackered. And I think from all that I've read, the manager at the time was just trying to get him off the books. So they sacked him. And then he went to like South Wales to play for, I think, Neath, and tried to rebuild his career, play for Spurs and then for Wednesday and then for England. And then sadly, because obviously being a former soldier, being an ex-England player, being a league winner, he died the week before the 66 World Cup final, so he never saw that. But he was also Charlton manager for 25, 30 years, I think. And, you know, I mean, a phenomenal servant to all the clubs he played at. And I think, and as well, really skillful inside forward on the right. So, yeah. And then to take you even further back in the obscure football history, chap called Fred Spikesley, who played for Sheffield Wednesday. He was like the first sort of Wednesday's first real superstar. Again, played for England, played for Gainsborough Trinity when they were a force in football, and but he had quite the story. And there's an amazing book called Flying Over an Olive Grove: The Remarkable Story of Fred Spikesley. But he worked in the theatre alongside Charlie Chaplin in like a football comedy sketch when he retired, and then he went to coach in Germany just before World War One broke out, and he got, like, him and his family got arrested, and he was going to be taken to a prison camp, but because of his old football injuries, his knees were knackered, so he managed to dislocate his knee, failed a medical, so got sent back to England with his wife and kid, and then put his knee back together. And I just think that anyone who can break off part of their body to get out of going to a prison camp deserves to be in a football team. So, do you know what I mean?
That's a fair shout.
Yeah, like, there's not many left wingers nowadays I think could do that.
No, I think the term for that sort of player is old school.
Yeah.
Him and Stuart Pearce on the left hand side.
No.
Yeah, it's a frightening left side.
I know. And then as we go into central midfield, I've gone for Jill Scott, Man City and England. And I think a brilliant player, attacking, full of flair, really solid, but also just a phenomenal servant to football in England. That she, I think, although there are a lot of lionesses that were well-known names, I think for me, she was the first superstar. She was the first one where I'd listen out for on the team sheet because I knew who she was. I'd followed her career a bit, and yeah, I just think she's given so much to women's game, as well as being a top player who is now sort of, I think she's 32 and she's still commanding, you know, first name on the team sheet for Man City in England, and that's not bad by anyone's books, I don't think. So,
for maybe a listener who hasn't seen her play, could you maybe compare her style to someone in the men's game?
Oh, I mean, firstly, I think they should go and watch a women's game, but
yeah.
But I think So she's got a bit of the. Is it Bruno Fernandes? I think / a bit of Paul Pogba. Like she's got that kind of.
She's very tall, isn't she?
Sorry.
She's very tall as well.
Yeah. She's very tall. She looks like the kind of player who her first touch will send it 50 yards away, but somehow it sort of glues onto her foot. And she's just one of those players like a Pogba, like a Fernandes, who the game seems to slow down a bit when she gets the ball. And I think she's got great vision, but also like she'll be the person who, you know what I mean, clears a header off the line from a corner. And then all of a sudden she'll be the person in the other box, like controlling it down and either taking a shot or laying it off for someone. And you don't see it get from one end to the other.
Yeah.
Just there. And yeah, so I think that it's just that, like a real box-to-box player and someone who can control the tempo of the game and, yeah, really do great things on the pitch and is a great advocate for the game off it. So. And for my final central midfielder, I've gone for Hidetoshi Nakata, the Japan and former Perugia, amongst other team midfielder. He was, like, the first World Cup that I remember was USA 94. But in the first World Cup I can really remember being invested in was, and I think because England weren't at 94, but was France 98. And he was there playing for Japan. And it was the first time I think that I'd been really aware of football from Asia, because as you're growing up, you see Brazil, like you saw the World Cup in America, but the teams that dominated were your Brazils, your Colombia, even though they got knocked out, like teams like Italy and Ireland and teams like that. But it was the first time I think football from Asia had really burst onto the global scene. And I know, and I'm talking sort of mainstream, I know that shows like a lack of knowledge or investment in Asian football before 98, but I think for a lot of people that was when they started paying attention, and particularly with the World Cup in Japan and South Korea coming just a few years later, that I think he was just, like, people described him as the David Beckham of Japan. And I think he was stylish, he was full of flair, great passer of the ball, did so much, a great servant to the game, promoted Japanese football immensely, even more than Gary Lineker's ill-fated time in Grampus 8 did. And yeah, I think that football's a worldwide game and it's a community. And I think we've got to, as lockdown showed us with like access to football in South Korea and things like that, that there's a whole world out there of really enjoyable global football. And we need to get out a bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Some of the most entertaining games, because I've watched quite a lot of European football, but I've seen a lot of South American games in particular, which are like some of the best games you'll ever watch. Like the entertainment and like the drama it's almost like scripted, sort of. Well, could be, but some of it is just like ridiculous situations that you wouldn't expect in like a European game. It's just, yeah, people need to go out and, like you said, just watch different countries, different continents.
Yeah, and I think that's a really positive thing about social. I know it sounded very negative on social media, but I think the positive thing is getting involved with football abroad and finding out a bit more and having access to, even if it's just the highlights, because I think it creates a positive global community where now I know that there's countries in the world I go to in a Wednesday shirt and it's already a conversation starter. So, yeah. And then up front, first up, I have Roger Miller from Cameroon. And partly because he's very kindly written the foreword for my book. But also he's just, I mean, he's such a lovely guy. When I was, so I contacted him and asked him if he'd write the foreword. And he said yes. And then I said, I need it by this date because that's when the publishers need it. And that date came and went. And I emailed him and was like, sorry to bother you, Roger. Would you
Mr.
mind?
Miller.
Yeah. And no, well, on the next email I got to Mr. Miller, would you mind? And then I emailed him a third time and I thought, oh no, like it's going to fall through. Like we chatted and he was really keen, but it's going to fall through. And then I got an email from him and like an hour later and it's like, I'm so sorry I've let you down. And I was like, no, honestly, it's fine. And he was like, I'll do it today. And he was like, I've had an email from Pele in my inbox for ages, but I thought yours was more important, so I've emailed you. And I just replied and I was like, no, it's fine. You can go and email Pele.
You can now legally tell people you are more important than Pele. So
I mean,
there you go.
Yeah. I mean, and Pele put Roger Miller in his top 100 players in the world. So
you're probably just shy of it then.
Yeah, I think that makes me 101
Yeah.
for influential football characters. But yeah, he's such a nice guy. But also, he again, like this shows maybe a bit of a lack of knowledge that needs working on, but really influential in bringing African football into the mainstream. And I think, particularly given the trouble that English football had with racism, and I mean had in the 70s, 80s with racism, his style of play, his celebrations, his goals really demonstrated to the world that African football was not just here, but it was here to stay. And I think he's had a really positive effect on the game. He's been an amazing ambassador, and I think culturally he's an icon. Like I got a copy of Football Easter magazine today, and it's, do you know what I mean? It's got a picture of a celebration that took place 30 years ago on the cover, and it needs no introduction.
Yeah.
Like, how iconic is that man? And yeah, I just think he's done so much for football, and he was a great player, and I think he's an underrated player. So that's why I wanted to pick him.
Yeah, I was going to ask before how it even came about, because he's such an icon of the game. And then did you literally just send him an email, approach him, or was it?
Yeah. I emailed him and we got chatting because I thought I'll always regret not asking him.
Yeah.
And he meant so much to me as a kid. Like one of my first shirts was a Cameroon shirt. Like I had a Chef Wednesday shirt and a Cameroon shirt. And I brought it up to my home when I visited my parents a few weeks ago. And I mean, it's far too small for me now. But it's this beautiful, like, it looks just like the Cameroon flag. Just a gorgeous shirt, and he just always inspired me and always made me think that anything was possible. And I just thought, I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to write a book like this. And I thought, if I'm going to go through with this lifelong ambition, I may as well aim for the stars. Because what's the worst that can happen? That he says no, and then I've still not got a forward from Roger Miller.
Yeah, it's better to ask than wonder what.
Exactly. So we got chatting, and I broached it, and he said he'd love to. And you know what I mean? I'm so pleased and so grateful to him. But I think because he recognises that the importance of mental health and that football's a community, and so I think he was super keen, super obliging. So
what he wrote was quite lovely to read as well, sort of, because he touches upon like where he's come from and like what football means to people in Cameroon. It was just nice to read that.
Yeah, and I think that we forget that we're so upset, like I said about Jadon Sancho, like 120, like he's a quality player. No one's worth 120 million. It doesn't matter. That's excessive for anything. Do you know what I mean? Like paying £1 million for a footballer is excessive. Do you know what I mean? But it's easy to forget that we all loved playing football. that we all would run around in our gardens or in our flats or on the local park and we kick a ball about, and that is replicated all over the world, that whether you're in a favela in Brazil or a village in Cameroon or, you know what I mean, a sports field in Tokyo or Edinburgh or Plymouth or London, Grimsby, we all have that same experience of loving that round inflatable thing that someone drops at our feet. And we forget that. And I suppose that's part of why I wrote the book as well, is that we forget how much we love football because it messes with our emotions so much that there's one part that I put in, like, that I say we should all get back to being that, like, kid who stands with an autograph book, because I'm older than all of the Wednesday squad now, which is terrifying. And I hate that. But when I went to go and interview Sam Hutchinson and Atiyad Nahui, I got there like an hour early to stand in the car park in the rain with a book for them all to sign and stop them all as they were going. And you know, when it's like I was old enough to be the dad of one of them. And that's really weird. Like, but it was liberating to stand there and enjoy football and the world around football. And I think that's what Roger Miller brings. And yeah, so
it's a good choice, definitely.
Thank you. And then my last, but most certainly not least choice is the woman she's now in Scotland's Hall of Fame for football, and I think she's Scotland's greatest ever footballer. She's called Rose Riley. She played for Scotland 11 times, I think, but then she was banned by the Scottish FA because she wanted to play professionally and they didn't want her to. So she moved to France to play, and then I think she played for Nantes in France, and then she moved to Italy to play for AC Milan. She became a naturalised Italian, and she captained Italy to 2 Women's World Cups. I've forgotten the name of the competition, but before the Women's World Cup started, it was like the forerunner to the Women's World Cup. And she captained Italy to the title twice, played loads of times for Italy, won the league loads of times in Italy. And she did it all while being ostracised by her home country. And it wasn't until last year or the year before, I think, that they recognised her in any capacity. And I just think that she is an example of someone who just loved football so much that they had to play, and she risked it all. Like, she was, I think, 16, 17, maybe 18, flying off to France to play football, then going to Italy. And you know what I mean, by all accounts, she just took a little bag with her, didn't really know where she was going, just turned up and played. And it's just such an amazing story. Plus, she was so skillful and such a good player. And I think that often we hear about really fun stories of people who, do you know what I mean, they'll go to, I don't know, Borneo and try out for the local team and then write a newspaper article about it. But this was someone who was international class, who time and again proved it consistently. And if you had a Scottish men's player like a Gordon Strachan or, you know what I mean, a Kenny Dalglish, like, they didn't have to do that. Like, Kenny Dalglish, who played at the same time as her, didn't have to abandon his home, his family, his environment to go and find somewhere that would let him play football. And from starting her career in the second division in Scotland to finishing her career in the top league in Italy, it spanned 32 years. Do you know, that's only 3 years less than I've been alive, and she spent all of that as a top-level elite athlete. Like, that's intense. That's amazing. And And I just think that, yeah, she does so much, but has mainly been forgotten. And I think there's a few people trying to revive the memory of what she did for football at the minute. But do you know what I mean? I just hope that she's more revered than maybe like the people like Lily Parr, who were discarded by the English FA, were. And I hope that her memory lives on and she's more celebrated than she has been.
Yeah, I think one of the good things about doing this format and your choices in particular is telling stories that people probably haven't heard. And I think that's a perfect example because, again, I'm going to show my ignorance, but I'd never heard of all that story. But hearing it now, it's like very inspiring. It's somebody that I want to know more about, and I think everyone should know about.
Yeah, well, I hadn't heard of it, but I went to an event with Pat Nevin and a writer called Daniel Gray and another writer called Chris McQueer, and they were picking their greatest ever Scottish players, and one of them chose Rose Riley. And so then I sort of looked into it a bit. Like they spoke about so eloquently and so amazingly, and then I looked into it a bit more, and then just found out more, and then of watching documentaries and stuff, and it's just really amazing. But we can't. We have to make heroes, particularly in the women's game. We have to make heroes, and you know what I mean. Scotland and England are both doing great things on an international level, and their names are becoming more and more recognisable. But we have to have legacies. We have to have heroes that young girls can look up to go, actually, I can do it if I want to do it. Like my niece turns 4 next month, and if she wants to be a footballer, I want her to turn on the TV and see your Millie Brights, your Jill Scotts, your Rose Rileys, and see them playing, see how skillful they are, see how hard they tackle, see how intense their preparation for the game is, and want to emulate them. Because I wasn't short of role models. So we've got role models from Japan, Cameroon, Scotland, Italy, all in that team. And yet we don't necessarily have that yet in the women's game. I think we need it for it to continue to grow.
Definitely. So shall we recap your team then for the listeners?
Okay.
In goal, we have
Amazing team.
Gianluigi Buffon. Right back, Liam Palmer. Centre halves, we have Millie Bright and I can't remember.
John Walk.
John, that's it. Left back, Stuart Pearce. I'm going to have to remind me of the wingers as well.
So Jimmy Seed on the right wing, Fred Spikesley on the left wing.
And then Jill Scott and Nakata in midfield.
Yeah.
And up front, Roger Miller and Rose Riley.
Yeah.
All managed by Ian Holloway.
Yes.
And now is the time for your dream team to make its first competitive bout. And we're going to randomly select one of history's greatest teams for your team to play against in a penalty shootout.
Okay.
I've got a random number generator here, so I'm just going to quickly do it just on my phone, so I won't show, but I'll be honest. And I'm starting it now. Okay, well, most people think this is probably one of the best English-based sides of all time. Your team is playing against the Manchester United treble-winning team of 1999.
Ooh, what a game that would be.
So your questions for this penalty shootout are going to be based around them. And Freddie's going to take it away with the questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, luckily, I've got 10 questions on that team.
There you go.
So here we go. So the first one for you, Dom, is one of the trophies that Man U failed to pick up that season was the Charity Shield. They lost to Arsenal. And we want to know, what was the score in that game? Now, it's multiple choice, so I'll give you 4 options. Was it 2-1, 2-0, 3-0, or 3-1?
I was thinking 2-1 before you said it. That was going to be my guess.
Yeah.
So I'll go for 2-1.
2-1. Okay. You went with your gut. But on this occasion, your gut was wrong. It was 3-0.
So is
So
that
that-
1-0 to them?
That's 1-0 to United. That's
Okay.
1-0 to United. Okay, question number 2. Does your team have a name, by the way? Are we going to give it a name? Or is it just Dom's
I
team?
mean, I always call my fantasy football teams Dom's Owls, but that's
Okay.
not very imaginative. But yeah, we'll go for that.
Dom's Owls. Okay, that's the second question for you. The other trophy United failed to secure was the League Cup. But who knocked them out? Was it Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal, or Leeds?
Chelsea.
It wasn't. It was Spurs. It's not been a good start for you. the
Is
Dom's
not.
Owls.
I mean, my knowledge of late '90s Manchester United fixtures is not what it could be. I'll give
There
you
is
that.
time though. There is time to turn it around.
There's still time. Okay. Let's see. Let's go for a little bit of an easier one. See if you can get one back. Who do you think was their top goal scorer that season? Do you think it was Giggs, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Dwight York, or David Beckham?
Go for Dwight York.
You're correct. You got one back.
There we go.
He got 29 in all comps and 18 in the league. Not a bad season at all. Let's get a question from their Champions League run. So they were famously drawn in the group of death. They had Bromby, Bayern, and Barca. But do you know what their record was in that group? Do you think they won 3, drew 2, and lost 1? Won 4, drew 2, and obviously lost none. Won 3 and drew 3, or won 2 and drew 4?
Gonna go for 1-3, drew 3.
Close, but it's not correct. They won 2 and drew 4. It's 3-1 to United. Okay, question number 4. United were third at the end of '98, but who was top of the table going into the new year? Was it Leeds, Villa, Arsenal, or Chelsea?
Gonna go for Arsenal.
You sure?
Oh,
Could be bluffing. I could be bluffing.
well, so Leeds were there or thereabouts because the next season they got to semis in the Champions League final, in the Champions League. I don't think Villa got into Europe, so I think that'd been too big a fall down. And that was just before Abramovich came in at Chelsea, so
Yeah, way before.
yeah, so I'd have guessed they were a bit further. We'll go for Leeds then.
Leeds. You were wrong both times. It was actually Villa.
Oh,
Sorry,
That's
Villa
now
fans.
4-1 to United.
Oh
We
no.
need a big comeback. We need a big comeback.
basically need to get everyone right.
I mean,
Cool.
so
Yeah.
far I'm not doing amazingly, so I'm
They
not.
aren't easy if you're not
They're
United
not easy.
fan. If you're not a
No.
United fan. I haven't known any, to be honest.
But they're a great team, so they shouldn't be easy to beat.
That is true.
Right. Question number 5. Oh wait, no, question number 6 now. United beat Arsenal in a dramatic FA Cup semi-final replay. But who got sent off in that game? Was it Scholes,
Oh, sorry.
Stam, Neville, or Keane?
Is it Keane? Was that the one with the fight with Keown and the one where Giggs scored an extraordinary goal and then they were
Yeah,
like a scrap?
the solo goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Was it Keane?
It was. We got a goal back. It's 4-2. All right. Let's try and get on a roll now. Where should we go next? Okay, yeah. So we got the FA Cup semi-final. So now we'll move on to the FA Cup final. United won that 2-0 against United. But who scored the goals on the day? Was it Scholes and Teddy Sheringham? Sheringham and Giggs? York twice? Or York and Scholes?
Go for Sheringham and Giggs.
You were close. You got one.
Oh,
But it was
no.
Sheringham and Scholes. So that's 5-2 to United. Impossible for you to beat them now. You can still draw.
Yeah.
So let's keep
We'll
going.
play on for a draw.
We'll play on for the draw. It wouldn't be a bad result as the first game.
No.
Yeah. A lot of
Okay.
goals.
Okay, so during the 98-99 season, United lost 3 games. And their last defeat came on the 19th of December, 1998, before an unprecedented 33-match unbeaten run. Which team defeated United on that day? Was it Arsenal, Villa, your beloved Wednesday, or Middlesbrough?
I mean, I'd hazard to guess it wasn't Wednesday because we went down. No, sorry, we went down the next season, but I don't think we'd done much then. Sorry, so Arsenal, Wednesday, Middlesbrough, and
Villa.
Yeah. Go for Villa just because they were top at the end of the year. So
They were, but it was actually Middlesbrough who beat them on the day, managed by Brian Robson. It was a 3-2 win for Borough.
Oh no.
Okay. Playing for dignity now. The 6-2 to United. Okay, let's go for this one. Who was Manchester United's most expensive summer signing out of these 4 names? Was it Jaap Stam? Excuse my pronunciation, but was it Blomqvist? That guy?
Oh,
John
Jasper Blomqvist, yeah.
Yeah. John O'Shea or Henning Berg?
I'm not sure if this is like a double bluff trick question, but I'm going to go for Stam, but it could be like a bluff and be Henningberg, but I'll go for Stam.
Well, you're right to detect a little bit of a bluff because Berg was actually their most expensive signing the season before. But you were correct that it was Jaap Stam. It was 10 million, so we got a goal back. So it's 6-2. And then, 6-3. And so the final question: who had the most starts for Man U in all competitions that season? Was it Gary Neville, Jaap Stam, Keane, or David Beckham?
I'd go for Gary Neville because I think
You'd be correct.
Yes.
So it's 6-4.
Oh,
It's not a bad result.
It's not a bad result at all.
I don't think I've shamed myself considering it was 20 odd years ago and I'm not a Man U fan.
Yeah.
No, you did very well.
Yeah.
It's Dom Zal's first game as well, so
Yeah, exactly.
minutes under the belt.
Exactly. It's like the pre-season friendlies this year. There's been no real time for preparation. So we're going into a league season just on the back of not much.
Yeah, does Ian Holloway keep his job after that result?
Yeah, I reckon so. I mean, at least 2 of his players are dead. So, like, I think to pull out a 6-4 loss when both your wingers are dead is quite.
That's not bad.
Yeah, especially when one of them played in the Victorian ages. So
one of them doesn't have a kneecap as well.
Yeah, one of them doesn't have a kneecap. Was a Victorian. The other one was a World War I veteran. So. Yeah.
I think Dom Zals are the actual winners of this game.
Yeah.
Forget United.
In spirit, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Credibility remains intact for sure. Well, thank you very much for being our first guest on this first episode. It was all our debuts, sort of like the Academy boys jumping in. I think we've done all right.
Yeah. No, I think so.
It was good fun.
Enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for thank you for joining us. And
thank you for being had.
Yes. And Dom's book is available for pre-order now. There's Waterstones, I'm presuming Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere where. So it's coming out in the UK and America. So, yeah. So if you're in either of those 2 places.
Make sure to buy it.
Yeah, please do.
If not for yourself, for someone who likes football or
exactly
interested in it. For Christmas.
Exactly. I'm kind of hoping that a lot of people who don't know what to get people for Christmas decide to get the book for someone who loves football.
Yeah. I definitely recommend it.
Thank you.
I'm not just saying that because you're here as well. I would say that for sure. So thank you for listening, and we'll be back sometime in the near future with episode 2. not got a guest confirmed yet, but we're working on a few. So yeah, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Peace.